A few years ago, my girlfriend and I, being seasoned hikers who've conquered various sections of the Appalachian Trail, decided we wanted to give the southern stretch of Virginia's trail a shot. It's about 166 miles and is definitely one of the most remote and least traveled parts of the trail, which is exactly what we were looking for. We packed our gear and set off on the Virginia Creeper Trail, aiming to finish in Damascus. On this part of the trail, camping on the trail or using designated shelters is recommended. However, we chose a more secluded approach, hoping to avoid encounters with hikers or late-night surprises. After some searching, we discovered an isolated clearing just off the trail. It was perfect. We quickly set up camp, cooked some food, and eventually settled in for the night. But around 2 a.m., my girlfriend shook me awake, whispering urgently, "Get your gun. Someone is outside walking around our tent." She said it sounded like someone was circling outside the tent, running a knife or something sharp along the side. I quietly grabbed my gun from my bag and we both sat in tense silence, straining our ears for any sign of movement. A few minutes of nothing but the breeze blowing through the trees, and then I heard snap, crunch, snap. Someone or something walking in the woods behind our tent. I got the flashlight and silently made my way out of the tent. Our fire had gone out, so it was nearly pitch black outside, illuminated only by the dim glow of the October moon. I told my girlfriend to stay inside while I checked it out. I didn't flick the flashlight on right away, so it didn't become a shining beacon of my location. Instead, I waited to hear more noises. After a few minutes, snap, crunch, crack, I turned on the flashlight and flooded the area with light. I thought I saw someone move behind a tree. I yelled out and told them to go away, making it clear that I was armed. I kept the light on the area with my gun drawn and slowly approached the spot where I had seen the figure. Suddenly, from my right, I heard what sounded like someone running through the woods. I turned the light in that direction, but at the same time I heard movement from the initial spot. Someone, or something, was retreating into the darkness. There's no way I was giving chase, so I returned to the campsite. I told my girlfriend about what happened. She was terrified, so I ended up sitting guard outside the tent in the darkness until dawn. In the morning, I looked around a bit for signs of who or whatever it was. I discovered a boot print not far from our tent. This sent a chill down my spine, confirming that someone, or possibly more than one person, had been lurking around our camp. I kept it to myself because I didn't want to freak my girl out any more than she already was. At this point, we were pretty deep in the hike and still had 2 days left. That day, we walked a little faster than normal and had covered as much ground as possible. When it came time to set up camp, I found a spot near a cliff where we could place the tent that would prevent anyone from coming up behind us. The whole day up to this point, I had this feeling that we were being followed. I had no confirmation of this as I hadn't seen or heard anyone else, but it was just a gut feeling. Once the night came, I gave my girlfriend the 1911 pistol, and I kept the Judge revolver right next to me. I assured her that if I slept at all, it would be with one eye open. After a while, she fell asleep, and I stayed awake listening to the sounds of the woods at night. After a few hours, I guess my exhaustion had caught up with me, and I fell asleep. I woke sometime later to what sounded like someone going through our stuff outside the tent. I grabbed my gun and woke my girlfriend, shushing her to be quiet. From the faint glow of the fire, I could see someone's silhouette against the tent. There was really someone out there. I yelled out to them, "We are armed! Get the hell out of here!" They dropped what they were doing and bolted. I came out of the tent, gun drawn and ready to shoot someone. Our stuff was strewn all around. They had rummaged through quite a bit of our stuff. I walked to the edge of the woods in the direction they had fled. There was a creek nearby, and I walked to the edge where there was a small trail running alongside it. Down the creek I could see a light. It looked like a lantern the way it flickered. Then I saw 3 more emerge from the other side of the woods. I told my girlfriend to start packing up whatever she could and that we were leaving now. We packed up everything of value but left the tent and a few other items and headed back onto the trail in the middle of the night. I kept hearing people talking in the woods and branches snapping. I kept looking behind us every few seconds to make sure nobody was coming up on us. It was completely nerve-wracking. If something had happened, we were still a long way from anywhere and literally on our own, since we hadn't seen another hiker the entire time we had been out there. I really felt we were in serious danger. We had been walking for quite some time when I heard something in the woods behind us. As we rounded a corner, I turned around and saw someone step out onto the trail and just stand there, watching us. It was just as the sun was coming up, and there was barely any light, so I couldn't make out any features, just the silhouette. I stopped and looked at them for a sec, asked them who they were and what they wanted. They just stood there, silently, watching us, and then turned and walked back into the woods. We picked up the pace and kept going, looking back every so often. We never saw them again, but my gut told me they were still there. We eventually reached the end of the trail where we had parked my girlfriend's car, extremely exhausted. We made it out of the Virginia woods without any harm. I have no idea who they were or what they wanted. Maybe it was someone just messing with us? I will never know because I will not be returning to find out. A close friend and I decided to go on a 2-night camping trip in the Adirondack Mountains of New York when we were just 23 years old. We hiked about 5 miles into a small lake and set up camp on a beach. This was not a heavily trafficked area, so we did not expect to run into anyone. But around 10:30 that first night, as we were sitting around the fire, we saw a flashlight moving on the other side of the lake. This was somewhat unusual, however, we didn't think too much of it. But as it got later into the night, this flashlight kept moving around the lake, getting closer to our campsite. We kept discussing who could possibly be wandering around the woods in the middle of the night. Once we realized the flashlight was heading toward our direction, we moved off into the woods nearby to see who was approaching. I took a small axe with me, and my friend had a .22 rifle. The flashlight came closer to the glow of our campfire, revealing a man. He had a beard and was probably in his mid-40s. He was carrying what turned out to be a pump-action shotgun. He walked around the campsite a few times, and then proceeded to enter our tent. After rummaging around for a minute or so, he came out and started yelling, "I know you're out there. Why don't you come and say hello?" We were about 50 yards from the campsite. My friend and I remained motionless under a hemlock tree, watching the man as he fired a shotgun into the woods, not too far from where we were hiding. He also swung his flashlight around several times. After what felt like hours, he snatched my friend's backpack and a few pieces of clothing we had drying off near the fire and threw them into the flames to burn. My friend, who had aimed his .22 rifle at the man, asked me if he should shoot. Unless he spots us and starts to point the gun in our direction, absolutely not. Fortunately, the intruder retreated back towards the way he came from. We waited until his flashlight was on the other side of the lake. It was around 2 or 3 a.m. when we quickly grabbed everything we could fit in my backpack and took off. We bolted down the trail with our flashlights and made it back to my car just as the sun was coming up. We immediately went to the police department and reported it, where we also spoke with some forest rangers. I haven't heard anything back from them. It wasn't that mysterious, however, it creeped the hell out of both of us.